Welcome to Caregiver Connections Journey of Hope. We're pleased that you joined us for this special program for National Family Caregivers Month. Please let us know where you're joining from in the chat. We know we've got people from all over the country. My name's Nicole McGurran, and I'm with the Alzheimer's Association, Massachusetts, New Hampshire chapter. The Alzheimer's Association is the world's leading voluntary health organization devoted to dementia care, support, and research. You can learn more about what we offer families and how to get involved on our website. I do want to highlight what I think is one of our most important services for family caregivers, which is our 24/7 helpline, which is available anytime, day or night, to answer any kinds of questions that you have, whether they get, especially questions you might have today and don't get answered, or to assist with any concerns that you have along your caregiving journey. And we'll put that phone number in the chat, but you also can go to our website and there is a live chat and email option if that is better for you. I'd like to thank our co-sponsor for this great event, AARP of Massachusetts, and introduce to you Kara Cohen, who's going to say a few words.
Thanks, Nicole, and hello to everyone from around the country. I am Kara Cohen with AARP Massachusetts. AARP maintains a deep focus on the health, financial security, and personal fulfillment of people 50 and over and their families. And you'll find that reflected in our programming, our resources, and in our advocacy. AARP is leading the fight for the issues that matter most to you. We're working to strengthen Medicare, safeguard Social Security benefits, and champion the rights of older Americans. And AARP is urging Congress to better support family caregivers, make communities age-friendly, and crack down on fraud, too. Thanks to our millions of members, we are winning the fight. In a historic victory, AARP led the charge for new Medicare prescription drug reform. And starting January 1st, a new $2,000 cap on prescription drug costs will take effect, saving Medicare enrollees who reach the cap an average of $1,100 a year. Additionally, for the first time, Medicare will have the authority to negotiate lower prices on select high-cost medications. We think this is an enormous step forward for affordable health care, and this is all great news for older Americans. We're pleased to collaborate today with the Alzheimer's Association on this offering, and that is also part of our November Caregiver series. I'm glad that Sandra Harris has been able to join today as the moderator for today's wonderful panel. You can find the rest of the AARP Caregiver webinar series at aarp.org/caregivingma. We have a session coming up on the 6 pillars of brain health and another one on universal design features for your home or for your loved one's home. Also, you can keep up with all that you have going on for AARP around the country at aarp.org/local. And to check out the vast reservoir of resources that we have for caregivers, you can go to aarp.org/caregiving. I will be putting all of these URLs in the chat soon. And finally, you'll find more to check out at the AARP Brain Health Resource Center at aarp.org/brainhealth. We have lots of tips there, tools, and explainers on brain health. So the moderator for today's panel is Sandra Harris. She is the volunteer state president of AARP Massachusetts. She has been our lead volunteer for the organization for the last 6 years. And as she tenures off, we are delighted to celebrate her leadership and her commitment to the community with the AARP Ethel Percy Andrus Award for Community Service. Sandra is the co-founder and co-leader of the Massachusetts Coalition to Build Community and End Loneliness. She received the 2023 Friendship Works Catalyst Award, was a 2021 Gen to Gen Innovation Fellow, and is a member of the Commit to Connect, a nationwide network of champions. So among other commitments, Sandra serves on the Massachusetts Alzheimer's Disease Research Center Community Advisory Board. She is retired from her business as an interior designer, which was S. Harris Interiors. She focused on senior living design. She has great background in management and higher education and academic health. And she holds a bachelor's degree in finance and accounting from Southern University and a master's degree in interior design from George Washington University. And last but not least, Sandra is a long-distance caregiver for her mother. She has one daughter and two beautiful grandsons who she adores and she's very proud of. Over to you, Sandra.
Thank you, Kara. Good afternoon, everyone. Family caregivers are the backbone of our nation's caregiving systems. In Massachusetts alone, there are more than 780,000 caregivers, unsung heroes, working hard to keep their loved ones living independently and with dignity instead of being forced into nursing home. Thank you so much for joining us for this caregiving conversation, Journey of Hope, where you will hear the lived experience of 4 family caregivers who are providing care for loved ones with dementia or related dementia. Our caregiving panel will discuss the challenges of providing care, such as determining when it's time to stop loved ones from driving, addressing legal and financial issues, and arranging care, as well as ways they have found support and hope throughout their experiences. We hope to have time for audience questions at the end of the panel, so please include them in question A, and the chat will also include additional resources and information related to our conversation. We're grateful and eager to hear our caregivers' wisdom, so let's dive in. With us today are Lisa Mitchell, Bob Costa, and Gina Hale. They will speak in this order. Lisa, would you like to get started?
Absolutely. First of all, Sandra, thank you. And thank you to the Alzheimer's Association and AARP for hosting and sponsoring such important work. So thank you for the invitation, and I'm happy to be able to share my journey. My name is Lisa Mitchell. I am the primary caregiver for my mom, who's 85 years old. She has been with my family, which comprise of my husband, 2 college-age sons, a dog, and a cat. She's been with us for the last 6 years, where I have been local and primary caregiver. As I reflect on my caregiving journey, I would say signs and symptoms were apparent maybe 10 years ago. At that time, my parents were living in New York City. I relocated them. And my dad, we relocated him in particular to Virginia from New York because he was suffering from Lewy bodies, and Lewy body dementia is a dementia-related disease, famously diagnosed in the comedian. I'm blanking on his name.
Robin Williams.
Thank you, Robin Williams, exactly, where he had very Parkinsonian movements in addition to hallucinations. So we moved him to Virginia, both of my parents. So at that time, I was living in Boston. I became a long-term caregiver for my parents. My dad only lived about 1.5 years after the relocation to Virginia to New York. And so I have had experiences being a long-distance caregiver in addition to a local caregiver. I've had experience now with fraud, senior citizen fraud as a result of dementia. I have had experience with legal documentation not being authenticated in different states because the power of attorney initiated in New York was not necessarily valid in Virginia. Diagnosis-wise, I was able to get my mother diagnosed by a geriatric specialist here I'm in Boston, in the Boston area. However, her primary care in Virginia dismissed my concerns and did not see that there was anything wrong at the time with my mother, and said that it was natural aging. So I've had all the highs and lows of being a caregiver, and I'm delighted that I'm able to share my journey, and hope that I'm able to provide a light to those who might find themselves in a dark space right now because of their caregiving journey.
Bob?
Hi, I'm Bob Kosker. I'm a retired educator. My wife Lynn was one that had Alzheimer's, and was we've been dealing with it as caregivers for about 5 years, but in reality, I've known about 12 years. And it's a slow, gradual thing, but as time went on, it became apparent what the situation was. So we'll get into that somewhat later. She is home most of the time, wound up going to a nursing home in September and then died in January of 2024. Which means it's all local. Everything we did was local. There was no long distance stuff. One of the things I noticed when I became troubled by it, my wife and I watched the movie together, went to the theater, watched the movie. It was a pretty compelling movie. And the next morning at lunch, I tried to engage her in a conversation about something that happened in the movie, and she denied having seen the movie. And I thought she was joking. And then when it became apparent she wasn't joking, that's when a switch in my head went, uh-oh, what does this mean? And I remember that night sitting on the porch crying because I was pretty sure what it meant because her mother had Alzheimer's. And it was a long slosh to get to the end, but without the help and support from family and friends and church and the Alzheimer's Association, I don't know if I could have been able to pull this off. Initially, I went to her primary care physician who sent her to a neurologist who sent her to someone who gave her a paper and pencil test. And at the end of the paper and pencil test, they told her she did not have Alzheimer's, which was a tremendous relief to her because she was dealing with her mother who had Alzheimer's at the time. But as things kept getting, and they suggested it was some issues that she had and she needed medication for. She took medication, it didn't help. And I finally talked to my brother-in-law, who's a doctor, and he hooked me up with Brigham and Women's. We got a neurologist for Brigham and Women's. They did a spinal tap, and on the basis of the spinal tap, they confirmed that she had Alzheimer's. So that was a period of about 2 years in between there where we didn't know what the problem was. We just knew there was a problem. And the problem wasn't going away. And it wasn't anxiety. It was something else. And it turned out to be Alzheimer's.
Okay,
That's off to you, Gina.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you all for having me. I'm excited to be able to share my story and some of the little lessons I've probably learned along the way that I think we all kind of learn along the way. But if we knew it at the beginning, it might have been helpful. So my name is Gina Hale. I live north of Boston, but I'm originally from New York. But I haven't lived in New York since I was about 22 years old. My mom got diagnosed in 2007. I was about 25 or 26 years old when she was diagnosed. She was 58 years old, and she lived at home with my father until she passed away about 3 years ago at this point. So my journey and my story has to do with long distance caregiving because that's what I did for the entirety of her 14-year battle. So my father was her full-time caregiver. He had in 2018, though, is when we finally realized we needed some more assistance and some extra care for her. It was just too much of a burden on my father at that point. So in 2018, how that all came about, I'll get into a little bit later. But some of the things we noticed about her and how we kind of got it diagnosed, she always had a bad memory from what I can remember as a kid. She always misplaced things, but it just was a little bit more than that. As time went on, she would tell you stories and she could never finish any of her stories. Also as a long distance caregiver, or at that point, just a long distance daughter, my perspective was a little bit more objective than my sister who lived close also, and my dad obviously who lived with her. They saw the different things that were happening every day, and day after day it was a little bit, but if I didn't see her for 2 months, I could notice some trends or some things that I didn't see the last time I was there, or if we went for a ride in the car, you know, the last time I was home and this time, you know, hey dad, we gotta talk about the car, you know, she can't drive me anymore. So those are just some of the things that from a long distance were a little bit easier for me to see in the decline of how the disease progressed in her. One of the things in one of my stories that I remember very clearly was her washing dishes, and this is very anecdotal for her, but you know, one time I would come home and she washed dishes regular. The next time I was there, she forgot the soap, but she was using the sponge. The next time maybe she was using the soap but forgot the sponge, and then it was just water and rinsing pretty much. So, just that was just one of the things that I happened to notice that I remember pretty clearly about when it was finally time to, get her to a doctor. My dad took care of all of her medical needs at that point. So he took her to a PCP first and then got her over to a neurologist who, yes, the famous clock drawing that I think we all know about that she unfortunately didn't succeed at, which is where she got her real diagnosis of dementia, and then, a lot of appointments and calls to healthcare professionals and healthcare insurance and all that kind of stuff followed. But like Bob said too, having a nice, the family and the support of everybody, me, my dad, and my sister were on board trying to do what we could to, as a group, take our part in how we could help each other and help her through the journey. So that's my story, and I'm happy to be here to share it with you.
Yeah. So let's take a deeper dive. As the disease and level of care progressed, how did you navigate the need for more assistance with the activities of daily living? And how did that change over time? And what services were available for you? Bob, would you like to get started?
Sure. Could you give me the last part of the question again?
As the disease and level of care progressed, how did you navigate the need for more assistance with the activities of daily living? How did that change over time, and what services were available to you?
It's actually a great question. I'm fortunate that I have a son and a daughter-in-law and a daughter who live close enough that they were available and were, I would like to say, happy to jump in, but no one's happy to jump into something like this, but were agreeable to jump in. Were caregivers as much as I was a caregiver. Also got a family. I got a couple of sisters that were very, very important help. And I belonged to the First Parish Unitarian Church in Kingston, and they were wonderful because they would come and take her for a cup of coffee, take her to lunch, take her for a walk, whatever it happens to be, which would give me those small hour and a half vacations in the middle of the day that you really need to take a deep breath, go for a walk yourself, clear your head because you know you're going to have to deal with it again later in the day. As time went on, I was introduced by Alzheimer's Association to a men's group of men whose wives have Alzheimer's. And we would meet every Monday at 6:30 to 7:30 on a Zoom call. They were pretty much from all over New England, from Rhode Island, Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. And we've become a really strong bonded group. Initially, there were like 5 or 6 of us. The program was designed originally for an 8-week course. That was 3 years ago, and we're still doing it. And there were 3 of us in the group who have lost their wives who still come to the meeting every single Monday to share experiences, to make the journey for the new people a little bit easier to navigate. You can't make it easy, but you can make it easier.
Lisa?
Sure. 6 years ago, when my mother came to live with us from Virginia to the Boston area, I investigated senior citizen programming. So the senior centers in my area provided a wide range of activities, and this was pre-COVID. So I was able to take her to many activities at the senior center, and I stayed until my mother kind of got acclimated. That lasted probably for about 4 to 5 months, where I could drop her off. She could participate in senior programming from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. At the 4-year to 5-month mark, leadership at the program center said to me, yeah, your mother really is not able to play well with others. And so she had difficulty identifying things that belonged to her versus other people. She would claim people's clothes. And so she started to become a little combative with other participants. At that particular point, I knew based on my work schedule that I was not going to be able to stay with her through afternoon programming. So I was really fortunate. The city of Boston offered a companion care program, and we qualified for it. And right around the same time when leadership was telling me somebody's got to stay with her during her time here, they reached out to me and said, "Hey, we think we have a perfect person for you." So this companion care program allowed 8 to 10 hours per week. I think, yeah, 8 to 10 hours per week and maybe even more to spend with her. So 2 to 3 days in a week, I'd have a companion care person who stayed. That person stayed with us for 3 years before she actually passed away. She became a family friend, a confidant for me. The companion care person was a lifeline. Bob and Gina both talked about having other people. My family, my immediate family, was always very supportive, but I didn't have a huge community initially. And so this companion care, her name is Gloria. Rest in peace, Gloria, because she really provided so much peace and comfort for our family because she just had so much patience with my mom. She happens to be a retired social worker, so she really had an understanding of the social aspect as well as the the community aspect that we needed. The other piece that I found that was so helpful, so companion caregiver is something that I strongly recommend other care partners find out about in their locations, is respite care. And so respite care has been a lifeline for us as well. We, as a family, sometimes go away where my mother might not be able to travel. We try to take her everywhere, but there are times in which it's just not appropriate. And you know what? I am actually very sorry, but my loved one is calling me. So hold on. All right. Thank you, family, for understanding. My loved one is asking me a question, so I'm trying to respond to her. But at any rate, the other important piece is the use of respite care. Highly recommended. Services you can find at various senior facilities that provide the caregiver and their support an opportunity to either get away for vacation or whether it's a day or a week that you take. I highly recommend the use of respite care services. So we continue to use that as we have found programming for my mom. Right now, we moved from senior programming at a senior center. Right now, we have moved to an adult program with the Rogerson communities that provide 2 to 3 days of continuous programming, activities, music, socialization, lunch with other members of the dementia community. And so she is with similar people like herself and is able to socialize and have a wonderful time and a full day from about 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. So those resources are out there. And I'm happy that we've been able to kind of find various services that have worked for her well.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you so much for taking the time to respond to your loved one. It only shows that it's a 24-hour journey, right? So thank you. As a long-distance caregiver myself, I know firsthand the emotional and the logistical complexities of caring for someone from afar. These include not being there to help with day-to-day activities and especially emergencies. The feelings of guilt, stress, and helplessness when it feels like you're just not doing enough, okay, and unable to provide enough support. Then, of course, there's the travel costs associated that all adds up for regular visits. Gina, can you please share with us ways you supported your father as a long-distance caregiver?
Yeah, I'd love to share that. it's very different from being long distance is much different than being there day to day, taking care of, the needs of our loved ones day in and day out. I think at a distance and seeing that there's a lot of guilt associated with it. I can't be there. I can't help. So you kind of have to get creative on how you can help and what you can do. So when my mom was first diagnosed, I actually lived in Seattle. They were in New York. So I was very far from them and I couldn't come home a lot to visit maybe once or twice a year. So the simple thing I started doing when she was first diagnosed was I started calling every day. I called every day, no matter what was going on in my day, no matter what was happening, to engage my mom a little bit, get her communicating. I would ask her what she had for dinner so she had to recall something or, whatever was going on with my day. And I kept that up until now, even though my mom's passed. So I've been calling my parents every day for 20 years now almost, which some people might find crazy. But that was one thing that I felt could help, that could get her recalling things regularly to keep going. When I moved a little bit closer was still a 4-hour or 5-hour drive away, depending on New York traffic. I would try to visit every 6 weeks, which, doesn't sound like a lot of time, or it sounds like a lot of time. It's a lot. When you're driving down after work on a Friday, you can only stay for the weekend and you try to do everything you absolutely can do in those, call it 48 hours before you have to get in the car and come back home, back to Massachusetts. So what I would do when I was there, my mom taught me to cook. I always cooked every holiday with her, every day. We did a lot of cooking. So I returned the favor, if you will. And I would cook meals. I would make her favorite was eggplant parmesan for dinner. She loved waffles for breakfast. So I would make tremendous amounts of food in their kitchen while I was there that we could freeze. So that way I knew my mom, for those of you caregivers out there, you know each meal, you never know if they're going to like it, if they're going to hate it that day. You might have to try something different. We knew if we made her favorites, she would always eat them. So that's what I tried to do. So I knew my mom would get a good meal, that breakfast, that dinner that I made. I was a part of it. But it also gave my dad a little bit of relief. He didn't have to cook that night. You could just throw whatever I would make. I purposefully made stuff that didn't take any prep, just put it in the oven and be done with it. So that gave him, maybe a half hour back in his time that he could maybe, put his feet up for half an hour and just relax for just a short period of time. Because like you both have mentioned, 24 hours, 7 days a week, it doesn't let up. You have to eat every day, you have to shower every day. So those are kind of the little things I tried to do from a distance that I hope helped. I think it helped. And I always like to hear if she remembered that I had made that dinner that next day on the phone call, that she recalled that I had made that eggplant parm or whatever I had made that time. So I think it was very helpful. And that's how I helped.
Thank you, and I'm sure that it was. Deciding when a loved one should stop driving is a tough emotional process that requires sensitivity, clear communications, and ideally a graduate approach. Bob, when did you know, and how did you manage the situation with your wife?
Well, there was one time when she was driving in the neighborhood and she caught someone's mailbox with her rearview mirror and tried to sell it as, well, I was distracted, but I kind of knew something was coming up. At the same time, my wife was getting going to Spalding rehab and taking some speech therapy. And one time she would drive herself and she would drive back. It was not that far away. It was only about 2 or 3 miles. One time I got a call from one of the doctors working there who said, we got to talk to you. So I went in and they said she shouldn't be driving. We see her getting in the car when she leaves and we're genuinely scared that she's in the car when she leaves. And they said that Spalding has a program. It was in Sandwich, Massachusetts. I live in Kingston, which is not that far. For $200, they will do an assessment to see if she can actually drive. So we signed up for it. She went and she took a computer test. I sat in the corner, and after that, she was supposed to take an actual driving test. When she finished the computer test, she said, "So now am I going for my driving test?" And the woman said, "No, you can't drive anymore," based on the results from that test. She cried. We went to lunch after, and she was very upset about the whole experience and said she wasn't going to turn in a driver's license. But Fortunately, the people at Spalding contacted the state of Massachusetts driving division, and they reached out for her license, and I took it. I took a license. And honestly, from that moment until probably a month before she died, she would complain about not having a driver's license. The key in all of this was I didn't take it from her. The doctors took it from her. The state of Massachusetts took it from her. It wasn't me. So she couldn't point the finger at me or my son or my daughter as being the people that did that to her. And I think that's critical. It's critical you get somebody else to be the person, somebody in authority. Even if you know somebody who's a police officer who can come in and say, no, I'm sorry, we're going to take your license. Something along those lines, because they will hold it against you for pretty much the rest of their life. And I am grateful that she didn't hold it against me, because I had that intervention from Spalding Rehab.
Wow, that's really helpful information, Bob. Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's look a little bit about the program and services that the Alzheimer's Association provide. What have you tapped into that has helped to make your journey easier? Gina, would you like to get started?
Sure. So my life got turned upside down twice in my lifetime thus far. First, getting my mother's diagnosis, but then again in 2018, in April, it was a Friday. Again, I live in Massachusetts. Or at the time was working in downtown Boston. I get a call from my dad. I went to the doctor this morning. They sent me to the hospital and they won't let me leave. I have to have emergency cardiac surgery on Monday. And that was in 2018. So my sister, local, she was quote unquote staying with my mother or watching my mother while my dad just had his simple doctor's appointment for his health. So she, hung up with my dad. Okay, what do I do? So leave work, get in my car, start driving to New York. I threw in a couple pairs of pants, a couple sweatshirts, and moved along with the day, just trying to figure it out to get down as quickly as I could to help. Because at that point, my dad was my mom's sole care provider, 24/7. It was just the two of them. And then after his emergency surgery, he was in the hospital for a week, and he was unable to be a caregiver for, let's call it 6 to 8 weeks of his recovery. So me and my sister were thrown into caregiving daily on a daily basis, practically overnight, and not really knowing what to do, because now we had two patients. At least we knew how to care for my mother. We weren't really sure how to care for my father. And we knew that he now, at this point in time, there was no denying it, they needed more help in the house. My dad just couldn't be the caregiver any longer. So having been a volunteer at the Alzheimer's Association for a while at that point, our first call was to the 24/7 helpline to just say, what do I do? Who do I call? How do I navigate this? Where do I go? I mean, we just had no idea. So when we made that call, the lovely person on the other end was very patient, very kind, and started saying, okay, here what kind of insurance? Okay, this is where you start. This is who you call first. This is who you will call second. Through that, we learned that in New York, there's actually emergency services that you can get. So you can get caregiver in the house faster than the normal track if these types of incidences occur. That didn't actually pan out for us, but either way, we went down that path to try to figure out if that was something. If we hit a roadblock, we'd call the helpline back and say, okay, we hit this roadblock, give me another path to take. We need to just, try something different. So we were on the phone. I don't wish navigating that in an emergency situation through the healthcare system without really knowing anything. Luckily, my sister is very organized. So we kept a binder of who we called, who we spoke to. So that way also my dad had all of this information, because we were, for all intents and purposes, setting up her long-term care for however long, beyond that it would be. It wasn't just going to be emergency, he was going to need help moving forward. So it was invaluable to have that kind of help, and just guide us even on who do I call first, where do I go. I do know other folks that use the helpline too for other things. I have a friend, her mother was diagnosed, passed away a few years ago. She would call just to have somebody to talk to at 2 o'clock in the morning if she needed that. And somebody was always there to listen to her and give her advice and just listen to her. So I think the helpline, I've also heard stories where when people get diagnosed, their first call is to the helpline before they even talk to their family members to get some support and some guidance on how to disseminate that message to the rest of the family. So I can't speak highly enough about it as a firsthand user of it, and how it has helped my family tremendously to get through that 2018, that crazy year of ours.
Bob, did you want to add anything about your support groups?
Yeah, I think it was a salvation for me. Alzheimer's Association, I got something because I reached out when I found out that she had Alzheimer's. I kept getting stuff from the Alzheimer's Association. And one that really got my attention was the Men's Caregivers group. And I thought that would be kind of good because I could be together with other people who are sharing similar feelings and being overwhelmed like I was. And the first meeting I went to, there were like 5 of us on a Zoom call. And like I said, it was supposed to last for about 8 weeks. And we now have 17 people that were on the call Monday. My guess is if we expand it because people listening today decide that they think this is something they might want to do, we may wind up breaking it into 2 groups. But right now, the 17 works very well. And we have an excellent person from the Alzheimer's Association that kind of runs the program. He sends out the email every week with the Zoom link so that we can Zoom in. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 on Monday, every single Monday. And we share lots of information, like what's the best watch to buy that will give you a GPS if they happen to go for a walk and you can't find them. About different things to keep them busy at home. What kind of puzzles are the best puzzles to get? What kinds of devices for showing pictures, for example, on a countertop or something like that. And almost every week, somebody's got something different and creative that's available. We share each other's information when we do the Alzheimer's walk or the Alzheimer's bike ride, et cetera, et cetera. We've gotten together as a group twice. We had a pizza party once and we had a cookout once, where one of the guys there makes excellent pizza. So he decided he was going to bring his pizza stone. They came to my house, we had pizzas and we drank IPAs because I don't live that far from Treehouse in Sandwich. It was just a really good, solid, and you know what? Spending a lot of time not talking about Alzheimer's, talking about the baseball game or a hockey game or how to fix this in your yard or this car or that program, not spending 24/7 fussing over Alzheimer's is a huge advantage to all of us. We're now going into like 3.5 years that we've been part of this program. It started in February 3.5 years ago, and it's still going strong. And like I said, 3 of us have lost our wives and we still come.
Thank you, Bob. Sounds like something I'd like to join. Okay. Finding hope while caring for a loved one with dementia is a deeply personal and ongoing journey. I know as I help to care for my mom, I find hope in moments of recognition, a shared smile or burst of laughter, those fleeting connections that remind me of the love and joy we still share. What brings you hope as you care for your loved ones? Lisa, would you like to get us started?
Sure, you're going to hear the whole family dynamic in the background. I've got the dog barking, but we're gonna keep it moving. This is part of caregiving. I will say I should introduce Coco because Coco is our dog, and the dynamic between my mom and the dog is really brought a lot of joy. When my father passed away, I think Coco was able to kind of step right in and provide my mother with an opportunity to care for someone. So Coco might get fed 4 or 5 times a day. That's okay. And Coco, we did allow my mom at one particular time to take Coco out for walks. We had a tracker on Coco, so we were able to actually monitor where the 2 of them were in the community and neighborhood. And we talk about the importance of community. I didn't know how great a community we had until one day Coco and Mom took a longer walk than expected. She ended up taking Coco to a doctor's appointment at the ASPCA, which is the animal hospital. And we were able to eventually track her down. But it was a community of dog walkers and people who said, "Oh yeah, we saw Coco's mommy. She went this way." So that has given me a lot of joy to see her enjoy Coco, take care of Coco. I grew up with animals and particularly dogs, and so I think my mother has a natural attachment to giving love to our dog, our family dog. So that gives me joy. Her smile, I think it's so important as a caregiver that you find that light that shines bright in them because they're still in there. And my mother, when I was very little, I remember she had the best smile in the world, and she still has that smile. And it just kind of lights up a room, no matter how my day is going, how frustrated I might be with her. When she smiles, whether it's seeing Coco or even seeing myself or, laughing at something on the television, I take that smile as a sign of hope that she's still in there. She's still able to express joy, and she's still having joyful moments, even though she's actively living with dementia and Alzheimer's. She's able to find joy in some of the most simple things, like a walk in the park. Taking Coco out or feeding Coco for the 15th time or giving Coco food from her own dinner plate. So those are the opportunities that I smile and laugh and say, you know what, there's still a lot of light in there, and we're going to kind of continue through this journey.
How about you, Gina? What brought you hope?
So, since my mom has passed and being the long distance caregiver, so another coping mechanism I used was actually volunteering for the Alzheimer's Association. And I think just being, we keep talking about community, but just meeting, other folks who are volunteering and, meeting everybody today and, you're not alone. We're making progress with all of the new medications and treatments that are out there. And I know that we're real close to a cure. I know it's out there. And just everybody working towards it going, seeing the thousands of people at Walk to End Alzheimer's who are all working towards the same goal, all are having the same struggles. Just knowing that we're real close really gives me a lot of hope.
Bob.
One of the things I remember most is just about every day, my wife would, even at the point where she really couldn't talk much at all anymore because she had aphasia, she would make the motions like she wanted to go to Starbucks and get her daily brownie and drink. So we'd go to Starbucks and we got a brownie heated up that they would cut in half, so we would share it. And my wife Lynn would look at the advertisements and pick a drink. And often, sometimes it was the same drink, sometimes it wasn't. And they would make the drink, and we would sit there and we would eat the brownie and have a drink. And the smile on her face was precious. But the best part of it was, since we were doing it almost every day, when I pulled into the driveway, they were already starting to heat up the brownie. If they were running out of brownies, they would hide one for her so that there was one there when she got there. And if she picked a drink that they kind of figured she wouldn't like, the waitress would kind of go, no. And I'd say, well, how about this one? She'd say, okay, and she'd get that one. They could not have been nicer. They were absolutely wonderful, right to the person, so that she so looked forward to going there every day. And when she had friends from church that would want to take her out, they always wanted to go to Starbucks because it was a great experience for her. When she pulled into the parking lot, she had a big smile on her face. She knew when she went in that she would be greeted. And oftentimes they'd be busy and they would essentially stop and just interact with her for a minute or two, just to be supportive of me and her. And one thing that I really remember in my mind, probably the most hopeful thing in my mind, was when she was at the Beth Israel Senior Psych Unit. She hadn't been communicating very much at all for 2 or 3 weeks. And I went to visit her, and I was sitting with her, and she looked me in the eye and said, "I love you." She did the same thing to both of my kids. Those are the last words she spoke.
Wow. How touching is that, Bob? Thanks so much for sharing. So, based on your knowledge and lived experience, briefly, what's one piece of advice you would like to give to others on the journeys of caring for a loved one living with dementia? Lisa, would you like to get us started again?
Absolutely. My one piece of advice is to bring your loved one into the light. Share your day with them. Take them out. Don't hide them. Don't be afraid that people are going to judge. As Bob was sharing, people are so compassionate and so kind and can be. And I think it helps our loved one socialize, be able to continue to communicate, be able to look at body language, be able to understand love and compassion. Bring your loved one into the light. That is what my huge advice is. Enjoy who they are today. Do not mourn who they were yesterday, but live along with them side by side. Continue to love them and have patience. I think it's hugely important that we bring nature, we bring love, we bring animals, we bring our full selves to them. And when they can, if they can, they will bring themselves to you and the rest of the world. So bring them into the light. Don't hide them.
Okay, Gina.
Lisa, that was awesome. I think you said it perfectly. I would just add to that, don't be afraid to share your story or reach out to folks and talk about it. I found through my journey, when I would tell people I was doing the walk to end Alzheimer's, they would start asking me questions and why are you doing it? And then to find out that, oh, their father had it, or their brother, or their mother, or grandmother, whoever it might be. Unfortunately, a lot of people have Alzheimer's or other dementias, and it is more prevalent than I think we even realize at the moment how many people are affected by it. And I think the more we talk about it and the more bring it to the light and just have the conversations, the more you can share with each other, the more support you can give. I mentioned tidbits of like little things you learn along the way. You can share that with other people. They might have advice that would be good for you. So I think, maybe previously it was something not to be talked about, but I think that's a thing of the past. I hope that's a thing of the past. It sounds like it is, based on a lot of the stories we've heard from everybody today. And I just think we need to talk about it and make sure that everybody knows and support each other and just keep bringing them to the light for sure.
And Bob.
I've got two things. The first is the Alzheimer's Association produces cards that you can put in your pocket. And on one side it's in English, on the other side it's in Spanish. And it basically says, my companion has Alzheimer's, please take that into consideration, or something along those lines. And you go to a restaurant, or we used to go to Macy's or anything like that, and you just privately hand it to the person, they would read it, then now they know what they're dealing with. And my experience is it always disarms them, because they initially get a little bit agitated because my wife couldn't get the words out, couldn't explain what she wanted to do. But once they knew it was Alzheimer's, they were fine with it. And the second thing I would say, and I think this is one of the more important things, is it's never too early to look for help. It's never too early to look at nursing homes. It's never too early to look at home health aides, because if you wait until you need it, it's already too late. You need to do this so that you have in place people that can come in and take care of some of the stuff around dealing with health care. In my case, my wife did not want me to have anything to do with her bathroom or showers or anything like that. I'm fortunate I had a daughter and a daughter-in-law who stepped up big time to do that. But I waited too long to look into home health aides, because I had 4 different ones come in and my wife wouldn't even talk to them. It was already too late. She could not develop a relationship or bond with them. So it's very important that you, sooner rather than later, you step up.
Thank you. Nicole, it looks as if we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Do you have any in chat that you'd like to bring to our attention?
Yes, I do. And thank you so much to all the panelists for all you've shared. I've worked in this field for a long time, but every time I get a chance to listen to caregivers talk like this, I learn something new that I can take and share with other caregivers I talk to. So thanks so much for your honesty and your willingness to share. So one question that we had in the Q&A was around if you have any tips around, how to maintain your patience, when your loved one is, asking a lot of questions over and over again, throughout the day, or maybe exhibiting some other challenging behaviors. Does anyone want to take a stab at that? Go ahead, Bob.
Distract, distract all the time. They're going down a rabbit hole. You pull them out of the rabbit hole and point in the direction of the briar patch, but you don't go down that rabbit hole, because it's you. Those of us that have dealt with Alzheimer's patients know how useless it is. Distract, find the shiny object someplace that you can redirect your attention to.
Thanks, Bob. And I would also just add, be patient with, you need to be patient with your loved one. You also need to be patient with yourself. It is stressful to hear the same question over and over again, and none of us can answer patiently 100% of the time. So to give yourself a break too. Related to that, I would say, we'd love to hear from you, what things you do to take care of yourself. Or that you did do to take care of yourself, because this is a lot of people have mentioned in the chat how stressful this is, and how constant the caregiving is.
Nicole, do you
Lisa,
mind if I jump in and answer
absolutely.
that? I mentioned Respicare earlier, which I highly recommend. I just completed my first marathon, and I have to tell you, one of the things that I think is so important is that caregivers continue to make plans for yourself. Don't forget your personal goals, the things that are important to you, that drive you. We can get inundated with the legal, the financial, the health, all of the things that we have to do for our loved one. But it is so important to make sure that you stay on mission to things that you want to accomplish. So that was one of my accomplishments, was to run a marathon. I did it. I was able to use respite care, where my mom was able to, be in a senior facility that took great care of her for the 3 days that I was away. And, still stay true to yourself about the things that are important to you. It's easy to get caught up in all of the other things about caregiving, but it's important to remember that you matter too.
Thanks, Lisa. Bob, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, actually, because I have such strong family, my son would every Sunday during football season, we'd go someplace and watch the football game, and my daughter or my daughter-in-law was staying with my wife. My son planned 2 trips. One was to drive to Philadelphia to watch the Red Sox play the Phillies, and would drive back. Another time was flying to Chicago to watch them play the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley Field. I'm a baseball fan. My son's a baseball fan. And because I had a daughter and a daughter-in-law that were able to keep the house in shape and take care of my wife so that I didn't have to worry about it, never even had to call home. I would go for 2 or 3 days and just let my hair down and enjoy myself and go have some deep dish pizza someplace and just have a really good time with my son, who was great company.
Thanks for sharing those great examples. It absolutely is important to make time for yourself, for your own goals, and that's different for everyone. I like how different your examples were too. Gina, did you have something to add? I just saw you take yourself off mute.
Oh, the noise outside my office stopped. That's the only reason.
Yes.
But if I had to add something, my de-stressing actually came from seeing my mother. So I had much more stress and guilt when I was away from her. So I said, I tried to go every 6 weeks when I had the opportunity, but if I could do it every 4 weeks, I would do it, because I just felt refreshed from just sitting with her for the weekend and watching the Hallmark Channel for 48 hours straight. That just gave me a stress relief, and I just felt good at the end of that weekend. So mine was a little bit of the opposite of those who are day-to-day caregivers, but I did that as much as I could.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in for a second there. My wife got into Blacklist. I don't know if any of you have ever watched Blacklist, but it is one of the most violent shows you would ever want to see on TV. My wife used to leave the room when there was violence in any other show she was watching, but all of a sudden she was riveted to watching Blacklist, and it dawned on me why. She didn't understand any dialogue. That's why she didn't really like movies, but there was always action. Because there was always action, it got her attention, and she just watched one episode after the other. And boy, there's over 100 episodes, so you can do this for a very long time.
That is a wonderful story too as well, Bob. But absolutely, I'd love to hear the variety and how people take care of themselves. And I worked with a very wise social worker who would always remind caregivers that, you know, you have to figure out what gives you back energy and find some time for that. And also recognizing that you have to work within your own constraints. Some people have the ability to be able to go away for a weekend. Some people might need to figure out how can I fit that into an hour's time, and it's different for everyone. I do want to highlight, I put this in the chat a few times, but it's come up so often. I know we've talked about respite care a lot, and how you get respite care, what's available, varies a lot depending on where you live and your personal situation. That's the perfect reason to call the helpline to get connected to the right local agency to start those steps. Because there is help out there. It does take a little digging to find it, but absolutely to reach out on that. I'm going to pose one more question before I turn it over to Sandra to close us out. And this is a little bit of a shift. It's a kind of a specific question, but we did have a question around home safety. And if any of you took any steps to make your home a safer place for your loved one living with dementia. I see Bob nodding. Do you want to share a few of the things you did?
My wife was a wanderer. She would go for walks. Initially she would tell me she was going for a walk, but then she would just leave. And we live on a winding country road with no sidewalks. So it was, when I saw her leave, I would get behind her in the car with the flashes on, which really ticked her off because she wanted to be independent on her own. But in any case, we would go out there. What was the original question? I'm sorry.
Oh, well, what did you do to make your house safer?
Oh, yeah. So when it dawned on us that she's going to sneak out of the house, my son changed all the locks in the house to being keyed on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put on the gate for the pool area, I put a lock on the gate, I put a lock on the fence. So my wife could not get out without being with us. And she didn't like that at all. She'd be kicking doors and pounding doors, but she couldn't get out without one of us doing it. And I think it saved her life because we had two times when the police and the fire department were there because someone called, they saw this woman wandering aimlessly. And we couldn't let that happen anymore. So that's why we did it. And it worked. And by the way, with that Alzheimer's group I'm with, there's probably 15 different ways that they're all handling these kinds of things. There's some very creative ways. Those that are very good with electronics, there's all sorts of interesting electronics out there that you can use that will help you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another great reason to call the helpline, because there are a lot of different ideas out there based on your situation that can be done. And we also have a great section on our website about home safety. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Sandra to close us out for today. And I'll just thank the panelists and Sandra and AARP one more time on behalf of the Alzheimer's Association for being a part of today's panel. I also will just let people know we are recording this today, and we'll get it up on our website by the end of the week, and AARP Massachusetts will also put it up on their YouTube channel. So take it away, Sandra.
As we leave today, I thank each panelist for sharing their wisdoms and insights. In providing care, you honor your loved ones' life story and craft a legacy of love that would endure beyond memory. May the days ahead bring you moments of peace, love, and connections. Special thanks to the Alzheimer's Association for reminding us that we're not alone on this journey, and we're all part of a community of caregivers moving forward together and finding hope in every moment. May we all carry today's stories as reminders that no one walks through this journey alone. In community, we find strength. In shared stories, we find solace. And in gratitude, we find the power to keep going. May we all continue to be blessings in each other's lives. Thank you so much for joining.